Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Today's question says like this. Yesterday, the following text was shared in an English group in the cell phone app Telegram that we would like you to explain since it is controversial and we do not know to what extent it is reliable or not. It reads as follows. Bhagavan very rarely used to go out before midnight for answering nature's call. One night he had to, due to stomach disorder. The attendant, who was standing quite away, noticed that Bhagavan took an unusually longer time that day. So in the dark, he went nearer Bhagavan. He heard a peculiar sound like slop, slop, slop. Bhagavan was talking to someone. Enough, enough. Are you not yet content? The attendant saw Bhagavan uncomfortably seated in an odd position, and a dog most excitedly and vigorously licking him from top to bottom. The dog, being thin and bony, was stinking with sores, was full of disease, and very ugly to look at. Lest the attendant should drive away, Bhagavan pleadingly said, "He has been very keen in showering his affection on me all these days. Poor fellow. He was always driven away before he could do so. Today he caught me in the dark. His intense love he has conveyed to me by licking me to his heart's satisfaction." Bhagavan got up with tears in his eyes, took leave of the dog, saying, "Porumada, Porumada, isn't it enough? May I go now?" The next morning, the dog was found dead. Was he dead? He was liberated, absorbed in Arunachala.
Right. So I think the question, this is a story, Ernesto said it is from Purushottama Ramana. I Googled Purushottama Ramana. It seems to be a book written by V. Ganeshan. It's probably, I think, more recently he's written a book, Ramana Periya Puranam, about devotees. So it's some other book of reminiscences. It is the stories Ganeshan would have heard from old devotees. Ganeshan isn't always entirely reliable in his stories. I know in Ramana Periya Puranam, someone pointed out to me what he said about the final days of Swami Natyanananda. Since I was there at the time, I know that what Ganeshan has written there is completely inaccurate, because the last two people to see Swami Natyanananda were Sadhu Om and I. We had been to visit him the previous evening, and we had talked with him. And during the course of our conversation, a few weeks earlier, we had been there, and Ganeshan and K. Nateshan and Kunju Swami have been called by Natyanananda about some issue. Some change was made to some book, which Natyanananda, it was a book written by Sadhu Om. Natyanananda didn't approve of the change that was made. And so he had called them and was objecting to what they had said. So this time when we met Natyanananda, the fact that the previous time we'd met him, this was the situation, the circumstances under which we'd met him. He himself said he hadn't heard from any of them since then. So I know that Ganeshan didn't visit Natyanananda in the last 2 weeks. So that was in the evening that we saw Natyanananda. He would often, sometimes when we went there, he'd be inside his house. For instance, that previous time when Kunju Swami, Nateshan and Ganeshan were all there, it was in a room inside his house. He had a very small house. But generally, he would sit on a bed in the veranda. It was a veranda enclosed on 3 sides, and the open side was enclosed by a bamboo trellis. So that was where he would usually spend a lot of his time. So we had seen him there the previous evening, and we had talked to him, and then we left him. Normally after that, he would have gone to bed, but early next morning, this was a hut that was given to him by Dorab. There's a devotee of Bhagavan, Dorab, who has a big compound near Ramana ashram. So this hut is in Dorab's compound. And the gardener, Dorab's gardener, the next morning found Natyanananda sitting there, and he was dead. He must have died a few hours after we had left him, and nobody had been after that. The gardener said no, but we were the last people who were there. So no one was with him when he passed away. But Ganeshan has written something about that we were all there and we were singing Arunachal Shiva. And the last thing but he also, Ganesh also wrote, I can't remember exactly, but Natyanananda was very sick or was in pain or something. And he asked him something and he said something, and such was his surrender to Bhagavan. It's all a very nice story he wrote, but it's completely untrue. So what Ganeshan writes is not always entirely reliable, but they'll also, because he picked, I mean, I don't know how he managed to, whether his memory wasn't good or whether, I don't know how he came to write it about Natyanananda in such a way. Maybe he was mixing up other things he had heard and he was making a masala, different stories, mixing them together. Anyway, whatever it is, I know Ganeshan's stories are not always entirely reliable. But at the same time, many of the stories he tells, they're things he heard from old devotees, and they, many of them may not be exactly as he told them, but there may be truth in them. This particular story, I don't know why Ernesto thinks this is controversial. Other people may think it is controversial, but to me, I don't see anything, there's nothing in this story that seems to me improbable. That is, all sorts of creatures were drawn to Bhagavan. And we know Bhagavan was, there were often dogs who I mean, there's the samadhi of one dog called Jackie, and or was Jackie the crow. There definitely were samadhis of dogs and crows and cow Lakshmi. Bhagavan was very affectionate with animals, with monkeys and all creatures, because for Bhagavan, Bhagavan's love is all embracing. Bhagavan loves us all, not because of what we are, but in spite of all our defects, Bhagavan loves us because he loves the good people and the bad people. His love was equal for all. Why? Because he see what all these good and bad in us, it's all our vasanas, as he says in the 19th paragraph of Nana. But they're not two minds, a good mind and a bad mind. It's only vasanas, but there's subha vasanas and asubha vasanas. Subha vasanas means favorable or good vasanas, or good vasanas that will be conducive to being a good person, and asubha vasanas, vasanas that will be with unfavorable vasanas, vasanas that will tend to make one a bad person. It's the vasanas that are good and bad, but inside we are all just that pure I am. And Bhagavan saw only that. He saw himself in all of us, so he loved us as himself. So Bhagavan's love, Bhagavan was equally kind to the good people and to the bad people, to the rich people and the poor people, to the high caste people and the low caste people, to the animals, and animals of all types. Often Orthodox people in India will consider dogs, they consider cows as a very sacred animals, but dogs are rather dirty, is the general idea. But Bhagavan was had equal love to all creatures. So this story seems to me to be a very probable story. I mean, there are a lot of stray dogs in India, and often they get this mange, which is their hair falls out and they get sores and things. So there may well have been, and animals were attracted to Bhagavan. So this dog may have had some strong attraction to Bhagavan, but because of its appearance, people would have driven it away whenever it wanted to come close. So this was an opportunity for it. So this seemed to me highly probable. If a dog, from a condition of the dog, if it was full of disease, as is said here, the fact that he died is not at all surprising, because dogs in such condition, they live for some time and then they die. So his heart, what he was seeking was to show his affection to Bhagavan. He showed his affection to Bhagavan, he would have died with a full heart, fully satisfied. So I think to me, it's a very touching story, a very beautiful story. And it's perfectly in character with Bhagavan to allow that to happen and to allow the dog to show its affection. In fact, perhaps Bhagavan knew the dog was that, and he took that excuse to go out at that time, knowing the dog would be there. I mean, that's my my adding my own bit of masala. I mean, when you tell a story, there's no use telling the story exactly as it is. You have to add a little bit of masala. This is why the stories we know about Bhagavan, it's very difficult to know where is the masala added and where was the original masala. Masala means the spices. So it's natural when stories are told and retold, and people do add their own things and they interpret in their own way. So as I say, I'm adding my own bit of masala, but Bhagavan perhaps, and I only say perhaps, I'm not saying it happened, perhaps Bhagavan knew that dog was wanting to show its affection, and maybe he knew that its time was nearing its end. So this was an opportunity. Who knows? Who are we to know? It could be a completely fabricated story, for all I know. I mean, it's not a story that is very well known, but these things do happen. And this story, I find this very much in character with Bhagavan. Yeah, and in the view of Orthodox people, dogs are dirty, but a dog that is covered with mange and sores and disease and everything, even more dirty. So for people of a very orthodox Brahmin type, they would consider, oh, that's very dirty. But for Bhagavan, the whole body is dirty. Even the healthy body is a filthy body. Bhagavan says in one verse, it was a verse that was originally Murugan had recorded something that Bhagavan said in Guru Vachaka Kavaya, and then Bhagavan himself condensed it into a 2-line verse in which he said, but taking a human, I can't remember the exact meaning of the verse, but the implication is taking a human body as I is even worse than taking a pig body as I, because pig bodies, they eat filth and they excrete filth, whereas the human body, we eat pure food and we turn it into filth. So Bhagavan, so the body is filthy in Bhagavan's view. Why should we take this filthy body as I? That's what he's showing. And we think pigs are dirty, they eat filth, so we are superior. Some people of a certain mentality will think. Bhagavan says, no, they are eating filth and excreting filth. You are eating pure food and turning it into filth. Both are the fundamental mistake is the same, taking the body as I, but whether you take a human body or a pig body or a dog body or a cow body or scorpion or a snake or a hornet or whatever it may be, it's all the same fundamental mistake.
Yeah, it reminded me that the same behavior as he had with the wasp, with the nest.
Yeah, yes.
It seemed like the same thing. He left the animal do his thing.
Yeah.
And that's it. He didn't do anything to reject him or something.
Yeah. And there are stories when he was in Virupaksha cave. There's one story I read. Someone saw. I don't know whether someone saw or later Bhagavan told about a snake that came up and went over Bhagavan, and everyone was terrified. Bhagavan said, if you leave it be, it won't disturb you. And another time, I think a scorpion, a big scorpion, climbed up Bhagavan, up the front and down the back. And people would say, oh, Bhagavan, weren't you afraid? Bhagavan said, why should you be afraid? If you just sit quiet, it's not going to do anything. Have you seen a scorpion climbing up a wall, stinging the wall? No, it won't. So if you just keep quiet and let it do its thing, the scorpions will sting us if we tread on them or if we disturb them as a protection. But we are not their normal prey. They're not going to come and sting a human being of their own accord. So if a scorpion walks up the front and down the back, it's not going to do anything to you. unless you move, then it'll be afraid it'll sting you.
Yeah, these are beautiful stories. I mean, of
Yeah.
they're all
Yeah.
it could have happened. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. And people wrongly assume, because in Ramana, this is something a friend, I spoke with a friend a couple of days ago, I just put up the video yesterday. A friend asked me about Bhagavan's attitude to the caste system. Many people believe Bhagavan approved of caste segregation, because in the ashram dining hall, there was a partition, and the orthodox Brahmins sat on one side and others sat on the other side. But Bhagavan allowed people to do their thing, but in Bhagavan's view, all are equal. If they want to sit separate, let them sit separate. It's no concern of Bhagavan. But when the partition was here, and Bhagavan would sit opposite the partition, so he can see both sides. But he would, though he's opposite the partition, he's slightly on the non-Brahmin side, just to show that he doesn't associate himself with all the. If they want to have those, if they feel that it's dirty, it's impure to eat with non-Brahmins, let them do as they like. But so Bhagavan is neither approving nor disapproving. The only thing Bhagavan disapproves of, the problem is not what you believe in. Who is the I who thinks I am a Brahmin, I am a non-Brahmin? That is the problem. So if you feel I'm a Brahmin, that's wrong. If you feel I'm a non-Brahmin, that's wrong, because this Brahmin, non-Brahmin is only for the body. So Bhagavan was at a very, very lofty level, but people misunderstood him, or they chose to misinterpret his actions according to suit their own beliefs.
It seems like always he turned the situation around and made a completely new approach or perspective that people didn't didn't consider. And made them think.
There's a verse in Guru Vachaka Kavai in which Bhagavan says, only one who has annihilated the ego is a true Brahmin or a true sannyasi. But very hard indeed is the annihilation of ego for those who feel I am a Brahmin or I am a sannyasi, because generally Brahmins are considered as the high caste. So they feel that if you feel I'm a Brahmin, you feel a bit superior to everyone else. Or if you, among the ashramas, among the modes of life, the sannyasi, the renunciate, is the highest. So if you feel I am a sannyasi, you're feeling superior to all these other people who still have worldly attachments. So long as you feel that, very difficult to get rid of this ego. It's better to outwardly have a life with all sorts of attachments, but to be inwardly detached.
Yeah, after all, it's a matter of identity. I mean, identity is a Brahmin, it's a sannyasi, it's whatever. Attachment to this identity, it's a
And object. What is it that identifies itself as this or that? It's only ego.
Yeah.
So ego is the problem for everyone. That's what we have to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. We're very lucky to have this simple but very deep method.
Yes.
Which is the one prescription, the one medicine for everything. Okay, so thank you very much, Michael, for sharing these stories with us also, and I hope this is helpful to clarify for the person who has a question like this about stories which are we don't know about the origin of the story, if it's reliable.
As a general rule, we have to take all stories with a pinch of salt, because there are so many stories about Bhagavan and so many well-known stories. I've heard different versions of the same story from people who were there at the time, because everyone sees when something happens, everyone interprets it according to their own understanding. So they remember it according to how they viewed it. So I take all stories with a pinch of salt. We cannot rely entirely on any story about Bhagavan, but that doesn't mean we should take them all to be false. We have to use our judgment. Does this seem to be in character with Bhagavan? If it does, then we can take it as a nice illustrative thing. But we have to be very cautious with these stories, because inevitably, in order to understand Bhagavan, we have to surrender ourselves completely. We have to merge in him, become none other than him. Then only we have understood him. That is, when we have ceased to exist, then only we have understood Bhagavan. So long as we remain as a separate individual, we cannot claim to have understood Bhagavan correctly. So, and Bhagavan himself said, the jnani is like a clear mirror. People see in jnani, what people see in jnani is a reflection of themselves. So everyone who saw Bhagavan's activities, understood it according to their particular mindset. So, and that's one thing. So the way, what we are, when we hear a story, we're hearing a particular person's view, a particular person's understanding of that story. That's one thing. The other thing is, stories get passed by word of mouth, or nowadays through the internet. And I may have heard a story. If I tell you, I cannot tell you exactly as I heard it, or exactly as I saw it. It'll be my memory. And then you pass on that story to someone else, and that other person passes it on to someone else. Naturally, stories do get the details get mixed up. Sometimes even in the mind of the same person. Like I told you earlier about Ganeshan, how what he's written in Ramana Puranam about the last days of the passing away of Natyananda is completely inaccurate. But there may be elements of that story but are true. But he, in his mind, he's got it mixed up, and he's heard so many stories from so many people, and he's also getting old now, so maybe he's got a bit confused. Who knows? But I mean, this is, so stories are not reliable. Even the teachings of Bhagavan that are recorded in books are not reliable, because those people are, according to what they understood, they have taken. There are many nice things. If we read talks and day by day and Maharshi's gospel, many very nice things are there, but we can't rely upon every word that's written there. It's very clear in many places, but the hallmark of Bhagavan is absolute clarity. But there are many things there that are rather confused, and it's not very clear what Bhagavan is saying. So the person who recorded them didn't understand. So there will be so many inaccuracies in such books. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't take useful things when they're there, but we should take them all with a pinch of salt. The only thing is, what we can rely upon absolutely is Bhagavan's own writings, because he himself has written Uludu Napadu Nana Arunachal Stuti Panchakam Upadeshundia. This is actually Bhagavan himself has written that. So that we can take as absolutely reliable. This is the true teachings of Bhagavan. And also, fortunately, Murugana recorded Guru Vachaka Kovai. Though Guru Vachaka Kovai is not the exact words of Bhagavan, because Bhagavan naturally spoke in prose, Murugana recorded in verses, but because Murugana understood, had a very deep understanding of Bhagavan, having surrendered himself to Bhagavan, he was able to capture the essence of Bhagavan's teaching. So Guru Vachaka Kovai is a very useful record. But all other records, we have to take with a pinch of salt. We have to use our discrimination and take what is useful and leave the rest. And also because in those books are recording answers that Bhagavan gave to people. Bhagavan amended his answers to suit the needs of particular people. So he adapted his answers to suit the needs of particular people. So not every answer that Bhagavan gave is his pure teaching.